think you're muted still.
There you go. I couldn't get it off. You're holding me hostage. Hi, everybody. Wow, what the heck is going on? This is incredible times. Before we get too deep in this, I want you to write down my phone number if you have something to write it down with or to record it on your phone. 714-814-0075. 714-814-0075. Also, my email address, 3 words, all crammed in together, pacificleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. pacificleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Anytime, any place, anywhere, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you got any questions or you need some help finding something, or you want a resource, or you just want to talk.
Attorney mode. And then I want to start educating them, justifying why I did what I did. It's like, you guys would have taken him to the hospital. We've run into that before.
I got something on here, Sean. Some feedback or something.
Shot over in front of.
There we go. Thank you. All right. You got to mute your stuff, folks, so we can get this thing done. All right. So we only have 30 minutes. We've got a lot to talk about. We're probably going to go a little bit over. Don't let my cow distract you. That's my buddy. I'm here in Arizona right now. Retirement is good, especially in light of what's happening. This isn't my show. This isn't me. I've lived through a few crises. I have a few tidbits I'd like to share, but this is about you. You have to participate in this and other avenues, other dialogue, in order for this to be successful. And that's what leadership is all about. So what we're not going to talk about today is certainly at the beginning in CPOA's headlines, it said this was going to be a transformational leadership course. It's not. There again is one of the problems with crises, is that there's some misinformation going about, but we're going to correct that. It's just leadership. It's just a discussion on leadership. It'd probably be more of a rah-rah session. You guys, just by tuning in, you've already demonstrated that your leader is looking to enhance yourselves and get better at what you're doing. And that's what we need to do. So I'm just a facilitator. And the way I'm going to break this up, unless we go a little bit sideways, which is fine, we can go any way you want. We're going to talk about some historical aspects of leadership, and particular policing. It's always good to look back to see where we're going. Then we'll spend the majority of our time probably in the present time, particularly in light of what's happening out there in today's world. It's pretty incredible. And then hopefully at the end, we'll just touch on looking ahead and what do we have to look forward to. A lot of legislation coming up, a lot of Supreme Court issues coming up, and policing, if you don't already know, is changing. It changes all the time, but it's going to change a lot. So with that, let's look back a little bit and get grounded on where we are by looking at where we've been. Certainly, I've had over 30 years in this business, and many of you, I looked at the demographics of this course. You're in all ranks, you're in all organizations, different agencies, a very diverse group listening in on this discussion. We have seen our ups and downs. It was only a matter of a few weeks ago, just before this pandemic, we were riding high. Everybody was giving high fives and policing was cool. It was like up there with the nurses and the doctors taking care of this pandemic. And in an instant, we have changed, and now we're under the gun. But we've seen these major issues before. Going way far back, racial issues as well. My folks are both retired policing. So my father in the 50s and into the 60s saw desegregation of the law enforcement world. And to him, this old white guy, that was like the end of the world at that time. God rest his soul. But it wasn't. That was just a change, a good change. My mom, one of the first police women to convert over to police officer and go through the police academy in a man's world, paving the way for many women in law enforcement today. The men just thought the world was coming to an end, and the women had a very difficult time, but it was a good change. The Miranda decision, again, in several decades ago, We're never going to solve cases. We're never going to be the police officers we were. Shooting at fleeing felons went away for the most part. Carotid holds, at least in Southern California and Los Angeles, we certainly elevated that to a deadly force area, but now stay tuned. We'll see where that goes. But major events, the 60s unrest, Rodney King thing, the riots during my time, the first in 92, O.J. Simpson trial, and to today, the new norms of the cell phones and the data issues centering on Fourth Amendment issues, the First Amendment issues in terms of social networking sites, and getting cops in trouble, all game changers, all changing the way we do business. But as I read an article one time, just maybe a week or so ago, from the former FBI director, James Comey, who talked about criticism and these changes coming about when people criticize what we do. It's like having a window, partially open, all the way open, not open. We can't let ourselves have that closed window mentality and get no feedback and no criticism. That serves no one. At the same time, you open it too far, you're going to be inundated with the misinformation, the rhetoric, all sorts of negative issues coming your way, and it'll be overwhelming for us. So we've got to find that balance. And one of the things that certainly has helped me in time of crises is having that balance. Be grounded in what you're doing, be thoughtful in your approaches, and being balanced in having that window open to receive that criticism that may be well-deserved. It may not be. But in today's world, we need to listen more than we act. And certainly I look around at some of our leaders across the country in our law enforcement world, and they're doing a pretty good job about listening. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So we've seen these crises come and go, and they will continue to come and go. We're in the midst of probably one of the most incredible points in law enforcement history, and certainly in our country's history in terms of race relations and equal treatment. But I can tell you, looking back at my career, some of the things I've done wrong, some of the things that I've corrected over time and certainly grew and learned from mentors of mine and good leaders, is that in traveling the country, California, I can tell you, leads the nation, hands down. You may have heard that before, but I can tell you with all honesty and openness, California is ahead of the curve in terms of progressive, professional policing. And we are still going to change, no doubt about it. We are still going to go a different direction. And when we get to that segment, we're going to talk about what's in it for the future, all these things that are happening in terms of legislation and court decisions and the fight that is going to happen. I will tell you that we have already done these things. We are on the way to completing some of these issues and making ourselves better. And we will learn along the way to get better and better as we move forward. So in the past, that's what I see. I look at people and try to gain some kind of insight and some kind of comfort from looking at leaders in the past. And invariably, I turn to people like Churchill, who said, or at least allegedly said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And there are others who said, well, that may not have come from him, but let's just say it came from him. Never let a crisis go to waste. All crises are things that aren't going according to plan, and they're opportunities for you to get better at what you're doing and grow a little bit. So don't let a crisis go to waste. Take this moment in time where things are happening and get better at what you're doing. In times of crisis or chaos, there's opportunities for great leaders to rise to the occasion, as I've seen done many, many times, and probably in ways that they hadn't done before. This kind of forces the hand. But let me read one quick one as well from Churchill, and it really delves into what I think is probably the most important thing in a historical basis about preparing for these kind of incidents or crises when they occur. To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified, for that which could have been their finest hour. And what that tells me, and I hope it resonates with you, is that if you're not preparing, if you haven't prepared, if you're not continually preparing for these kind of incidents, crises, moments in history, and you get tapped on the shoulder like you're being tapped on now to change your ways or be better or to move in a different direction, and you're ill prepared to do that, you're going to fail. And so the number one thing I want to bring home when we talk about preparing or looking at in a historical context up to today, what are you doing? What have you done to prepare for the things that are happening today? And if you haven't, start now. I'm sure many of you have. Going to school, taking courses, reading books, getting online, reading the news. There are many books out there. I'm not going to belabor a list of them. You certainly can contact me. I can give you a whole bunch of them. In our course, we look at Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leaders, are two great books by a couple of ex-Navy SEALs. And I would look for you to look at other places besides policing or military leadership to gain some insight, business world insights of leadership, places like that. Google alerts, if they're easy to set up to alert yourself when things are happening. You're going to get a little inundated right now because the police world is in the news. But be a constant and consummate student of your profession. Period. If you haven't done anything or it's been weak, get on board and start at it. Start getting on it and start getting that foundational level of experience and expertise. Find those jobs to make you grow and be that student of leadership constantly. It takes work. I get it. It's hard. I get it. We don't have enough time. I understand. But you need that foundation, you need that base so that when these things come up like we're facing today, it's you're better prepared to do that. So second point I want to make out is build relationships. And you should be already doing that before, whether you're line level, mid-level supervisor, command level, no matter if you're police, attorney, district attorney, the policing world, and certainly the world that we all live in, we are human beings, and this is a human endeavor. It's all about relationships, and both internal, external, and in between. And if you don't foster and cultivate those relationships, you will drown when the time comes when you need to pull them together to help you move through a tough time like today. So, having said that, looking at the historical part of what we're looking at, let me hear from you. Anybody there looking at from yesterday before, tell us some things that you have done to prepare yourself as a leader, and share with your colleagues things that I have not just talked about. And this is going to require somebody with some guts to push the button and go. I know you're out there. Crickets.
Anyone have any thoughts or questions or insights? You should be able to unmute yourselves, and please feel free to just speak up.
All right. Don't be passive. All right. Let's talk about today. These are tough times. We have been there, many of us. I'm sure you have been through a few yourself. Certainly in the near past, starting with the pandemic, boy, that was something none of us were prepared for to the extent we're in it now. And we've come a long way. You guys are doing a good job out there. What I would encourage you to do as leaders is don't lose faith. Don't quit. There was a point in my career, certainly during Rodney King era and subsequent riots after the court challenges, I did lose faith, and there came a point I was going to hang it up. And it's easier said than done. It took a lot of folks convincing me to stay the course, to stick it out, and it was well worth it. But leaders make a home for people during tough times that is comfortable as possible, so that they don't leave. You will need your success depends on the people who work for you and with you and that you work for. Hold them together and hold on to them because it's getting rough out there, and do what you can to keep them. A term that I like and I learned recently is hubris, Hubris, hubris. And for those that don't know what that means, is that's that excessive pride or overconfidence, almost like a cockiness. And I have been guilty of that as well during my time on certain circumstances until somebody slapped me down. Sometimes I have a lot of hubris in my home until my wife slaps me down, and that's cool. Stay humble. Part of being a leader in difficult times is to stay humble. Humility over hubris will carry the day. And if you remember that as you move forward, treat people with respect and dignity, all folks, be humble in everything that you do, and resist that urge when things are going well to be a little bit overconfident and a little cocky, because you'll get slapped down. So, crises come in many, many forms. The dynamic forms, particularly, before the pandemic and before these mass demonstrations of where we are today. When I thought of crises, I think of, critical incidents that are happening in the field where 100 million things are going on and you're in charge and you're trying to sort them out. And there's techniques that we talk about in certainly our leadership course, and there are other courses. We're not the only one out there. I encourage you to take as many as you can about breaking down those issues into salient, actionable pieces and delegating and handling those things. And we're not going to talk about that at length here, but certainly things can get overwhelming on these kind of issues where it's the whole profession under fire and the whole social networking of and fabric of our country that seems to be at odds right now. Community issues, government issues, all sorts of things. So we can't narrow it down at this stage of the game, but leadership is leadership. Leadership takes place during small critical incidents, big dynamic incidents, multiple SWAT call outs. You got everybody in the world coming there, officer involved shooting, deputy involved shootings, up to big giant events like we're handling today. Leadership is the same. Leadership is about taking charge, being humble, building those relationships, looking back at the relationships you built on and going back to those folks and saying, all right, tell me something that I'm doing wrong. Let's see if we can find some common ground. At the same time, not giving up everything we worked hard for about being that professional. And certainly, again, California leads the way. So when any crisis comes, whether it's a small critical incident in the field or whether it's something big and dynamic, we do tend to get overwhelmed. And when this thing blew up and here we are battling in the streets, and certainly I'm, for the first time in my life, sitting on the sidelines going, what the, I wasn't used to it. And I felt very awkward and just, I felt that I couldn't, impotent. I felt I couldn't come to the rescue of anybody and help. I wanted to help. But there's 100 million things going on right now, 100 million things going on right now. And it can feel overwhelming. So another leadership lesson that I like to convey is in any crisis, small, big, medium, whatever, first thing is take a deep breath, a cleansing breath, literally and figuratively take a deep breath. That cleansing breath centers you and gets your thought process cleared, and then frame it. Frame whatever you're dealing with. And in today's world, we got a lot of stuff going on, but break it down into its actionable pieces and try to figure out how it relates to you in your organization, your people, and deal with them or delegate them to others so that it's easier to manage and you will be less overwhelmed, you'll be less crazy and better able to handle this big, unseemingly huge mess that seems to be out there when in fact, it's just a change. It's a lot of criticism and it's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of noise too, and a lot of misinformation. But break it down into its pieces and get it down to how it affects you and your organization, but also in policing in general, and be part of that conversation. So frame the issues, break it down into its elemental pieces so that you can attack those pieces and try to nip at those to move forward so that you're not moving backwards and you're not treading water. You want to move forward. And in today's world, I'm often reminded, being now the old guy in the room, all generations, including mine, want to know more why. This is the why time, and that's okay. It's just a different frame of reference that I'm dealing with, of being more communicative and telling people why you're doing certain things or why you're not doing certain things, more importantly. And remember that it's not us versus them, particularly in today's world. We're not warriors. We're going to have to get that out of our heads. We're guardians, and that's okay. You can have a warrior mentality when you need to. I'm certainly not saying throw it all away, but be authentic, be genuine, and try not to be defensive. And that is easier said than done, certainly for me. As soon as I get criticized or as soon as something goes against what I believe in, my immediate reaction, because I'm human, just like everybody else, is to throw that defensive shield up and say, whoa, 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 whoa. No, we're not going down this path. Let's not have that. In today's world especially, we're going to hear and see and do a lot of things that go against what we've been doing for the last millennia. And I'm okay with that. And you should be too. Come to grips with that. Again, don't throw it all away. We do a lot of good stuff here. We are not broken. I can tell you that. Policing is not broken, certainly in our world over here in the Western United States. And I'm not saying anybody else is either. I'm not throwing stones. But things are going bad in certain places that we've already dealt with or are dealing with. And we have good policies in place to deal with those things. And we're going to have to change a little bit, but let's not forget that we're not broken. We could do things better. We're no different than any other organization or entity, and we can do things a lot better. So one of the things that we certainly harp on in our class, and I want to really share with you, be decisive at all times. Nothing irks people, humans, more, particularly in our world, in this paramilitary world that we're in, is indecisiveness and lack of decision making. And I'm okay with pontificating to a certain extent about where you're going to go. But sometimes we do that a little bit too much. We want to see action. And what's needed now and today, in today's crisis, is that we're thoughtful in what we're doing. We band together. We feed off each other in terms of trying to figure out what the right way forward is. And we are decisive about where we're going. And certainly when things are going a little bit against our morals and our values as law enforcement officers, we're going to raise our hand and say, no, we can't do that. Let's try to find some other avenue to do that. Be vocal, be steadfast in what you're doing, but decide on things that come up, be decisive. That is probably one of the number one killers of leadership, is when we're not decisive. And I don't care whether you make a decision that later proves to be not quite the right way, or maybe there could have been a better way. We learn from those, we grow with those. We are human. We're going to make those mistakes, even as leaders. We are not perfect. I have made my share of mistakes, but I decide and I act and I move forward as thoughtful as I can with the information that I have at that time. And you should too. So make decisions, be decisive, especially when they come to hard decisions where you're dealing with people's lives, people's careers. Be decisive, make those tough decisions, and your troops will respect that. So in today's world, one other last thing, particularly that I think is missing a lot, and again, easier said than done, is the communication piece. Invariably, and I would assume many of you that have read any after action report, any kind of debrief, the number one thing that crops up constantly is we could have done a better job communicating. Right now, we've got other folks controlling the message, and that's okay. We need to see more leaders out there, really more chiefs, IECP, and we're doing it. I see it, but you can't be shy. For those that are contemplating rising to that level, or those that work in an environment of at will, where you make a goof and you're gone. No due process, so to speak. Makes it a little tough. I would encourage you not to take that leap until you're financially secure and have got a pension or something that you can hold your hat to when and if that time comes, because I would want you to be vocal, professional, and decisive during times of crisis, and your troops want to see that too. And that may cost you your job, and you have to be prepared for that. You cannot be shy about that. So understanding that before you take that leap would be very helpful. Those that are in it, we know it, but be true to yourself and be true to your profession, to your leadership, certainly your civic leadership, your bosses, your city council, your community especially. They need to hear from you, and your troops equally, especially your troops. Your teammates need comfort. They need to know we're all on the same page. And they need to know that when you're going to make decisions that go against where we've been going for the long haul, they need to know why you're doing it. And that's hard. You're going to have some tough conversations. Don't be afraid. Remember who you work for too. All of us, we work for the people we serve. Don't forget that when it comes time that they are not going along with the flow and don't want us to go a certain way that we've been going, and we need to change, let's have a discussion about it. I'm not all for the rioting. I'm not all for the violence. I can deal with that. It's going to be a little more difficult dealing with that, it looks like, but we'll deal with that. But an honest discussion when they're fed up about certain things, and certainly I think there's fed up about things that are outside of policing. It's kind of coming into our world. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to be open-minded about it, and we're going to talk about it. And so communication is a big factor in leadership, both internal and external. You got to get out there. You got to talk, and you got to be the face of your organization constantly, and get through this crisis, because this too will end. It will, just like the pandemic will end, and I'm not sure when. I'm starting to worry, but it'll end. This all will end. The rainbow will come out, the showers will stop, and we'll be better for it. So anybody want to weigh in today's world? What are you doing today? Doesn't have to be really about your profession. It can be. It certainly can be about your organization. What's going on out there? If we got any leaders out there that want to weigh in before we wrap this thing up?
So Dave, I put in the chat question for everyone, but I'll ask you for the times, in the post Rodney King world and in the post OJ trial world, where every aspect of policing was being scrutinized, how you're doing this, investigations, how you're responding. What were some of the tools you implemented to maintain motivation from the troops? I'm sure you saw and heard people that said, man, I took an oath to wear this badge, and I don't know if I can do it anymore. I don't know if it's the right thing. I just don't know, going out. You mentioned being in front of the community, but what were specific things that you used to kind of rally the troops when times seemed their darkest?
Motivation, the word, the term, the issue, certainly on promotional exams, you'll see that as a question. What do you do? How do you motivate people? And I go back to what I talked about just a little while ago, is that we're made up of human beings. Leadership is about motivating human beings to do something for someone or someplace to get that goal. It is all about this human interaction. And if you can create and make as a leader, and you're not always going to be perfect. I'll tell you, number one, you're not going to win everybody's heart. And that's hard for sensitive people like me. I want to be liked. I get that. And I think a lot of us do. It's just human nature. But that human factor about what I talked about making a home, making it as comfortable as possible, and letting people know what you're doing for what reasons, and leading from the front, that is a natural motivator for people. When they rate about what motivates them to stay to be a police officer in good times and bad, you look at, well, how much money are they being paid? Low. I mean, in terms of their rankings of a motivator, pay is lower, even though we all want more. We all want, I'm one of them. I Mama needs new shoes, man. I gotta earn that money. I get it. I gotta work some overtime. Babies need new shoes too. So money is not it. It is that human interaction is the biggest motivator. And if you can create that environment where people are going to be treated fairly, and I'm talking about right now, internally in your organization, and it doesn't have to be for your entire organization, particularly if you're at a mid-level, junior level, even line level, your world, the people you interact with, if you make them feel comfortable, safe, able to express their views, they know where you're going, you hold the line when people stray, you're fair in discipline and you're fair in praise, and you lead in that way where you capture the hearts of people, they will follow you. They will. That's a human trait, and that's that social being that we want to be a part of. And any leadership books that you read, anything, not just police or military, but business world, other people, talk show hosts, whatever, it's that capturing the heart of people is the true motivators. And that has come to fruition for me during tough times that I talked about when I was involved with. When times where I was going to quit, I said, you know what? It's kind of nice here. I got some good friends here. These guys and ladies are out here busting their tail. I can't leave them alone. I want to be part of that. You want to be part of something greater than you, if that makes sense. Anybody else? Then I'll just wrap it up then. Let's talk real quick about where we're going with this thing.
I see. I see. There's Kathy Hale raised a hand. Do you have a comment or question, Kathy?
Yay, Kathy!
You should be able to unmute yourself.
We're all new at this Zoom thing.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey.
Hi, Dave McGill.
Kathy, what's going on?
How are you?
Former student, A1 ace.
Oh gosh, come on.
Of course she would be the one to raise a question.
Well, I wasn't going to really raise a question, but I was just responding to the chat, what avenues you're implementing to maintain motivation. I know in my office particularly, we are definitely having a lot more conversations between ourselves regarding what's going on, and some of the newer people feeling, demotivated, social media and the news and everything that's going on, and just kind of talking about how, they're all young and how this has happened before, and we'll get through it. You're doing the right thing, continue to do the right thing. So I was just going to say, that's what we're doing. We're definitely talking about it a lot more, and it's probably something that, you should always bring up every once in a while anyway, because It is something that has happened before and it's going to happen again, kind of a thing.
No, that, again, excellent point. It's that communication piece that we often fail at, and we don't fail, we do communicate, but maybe not to the level that we need to. And I look at in the mirror, and I'm guilty of many instances where in my mind, I think I'm doing the right thing and I'm out there and I'm doing it. And the feedback I get is, hey, you need to do a little bit more. And sometimes that's hard. I get it. But in today's world, again, unprecedented times where what you're hitting on is this piece about inclusion and about respect and about letting people know what you're doing, because they will follow you if they believe in you and they believe in the mission, even when all hell's breaking loose. They're going to follow you. And we need in that communication piece about taking that time. And as leaders, you signed up for this. You got to do it somehow, some way. Over communicate as to the best you can, and include them in the conversation, and as many decisions that you can, in terms of the way the department is actually shifting, perhaps bringing more troops in, more line level, perhaps in a ad hoc committee type stuff, to let them be part of this discussion. This is organizational game changing. Left turn, quite frankly, where we're going to need everybody and all hands on deck to really think this through. And Kathy, and we talk about in all sorts of avenues, is that the higher up you go doesn't mean you're any smarter. I just took the test. I took the test and I got lucky. There are very, very smart people in all ranks that may have some thought that you didn't have. And the more you include them, as much as you can, not every instant, but as much as you can, the better off you're going to be. So excellent point. I appreciate that. A plus again.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. I see Sean from another tuner inner. Collaboration on non-emergency items and decisions is also a great way to motivate. Wow. I didn't just read that and just say it. I didn't copy you, I swear. Good point. All right. And again, feel free to raise your hand. I think Sean will catch you, but let's just look forward real quick on this mess that now looks like a mess. And remember, break it down into its individual components. And remember something else too, you only have control over a little bit of the pie here. The noise and the other things, the external stuff out there that you don't have real control over, try not to let it eat you up. Because as a human and somebody who cares, that is a leader, that I'm sure you are, it will have an effect on you, but try to compartmentalize that and push that aside when you're talking about where we're going to go on this thing, how we're going to move forward. One last Churchill-ism, if I can. It's very apropos for today. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And apparently we haven't done enough of that. And okay, let's sit down and listen a little bit more. Probably as we move forward, the relationship building is key. The decisiveness is key. But let's look at some of the things on the horizon that people are talking about and you're seeing in the media. The defunding of police ain't gonna happen, guys. It's just not gonna happen. There will be some parts perhaps that will be defunded, or your budgets are gonna be attacked, and we're gonna shift some of that money to other programs. That's a decision elected officials have to make. You can weigh in on them. You can be part of that conversation. I hope you are. But that bus is going down that road. And quite frankly, I have to chuckle a little bit. You look back on my career, certainly, and maybe in yours. Have you ever had a conversation with your partner or your peers to say, you know what, why are we responding to these calls? Why do we have to be out here? Why do we gotta mess with this stuff? We should be crime fighting. We should be, all this. Well, guess what? The public kind of wants that. And that's good. They're actually giving us, or pointing a roadmap to places where we've been crying about that for years. So yeah, how they're gonna do it, and that's gonna be interesting to watch, but that's okay, be part of that conversation. But to carve that piece out about responding to the homeless or the mentally ill or to neighbor disputes and things where you don't have to, your numbers might be smaller in terms of long-term policing, but you know, that's one thing off your shoulders, off your plate. Not bad. Be the optimist in life. Look at things with a silver lining. The chokehold discussion. Many departments have gone away from those except in deadly force situations. And certainly the cry and out there by the community is to eliminate them wholeheartedly. And, you know, as a professional, you know, well, I can live with that to a certain extent. I never want to let that piece go for absolute all hands on deck fight of your life. And you've got no other tool to save your life or the life of someone else. I think it still belongs. But again, that's a discussion. California, if you're not aware, the governor has instituted or starting to institute some legislation about California Post no longer having that ability or that focus to teach that kind of stuff, which I think is misguided, of course, but the discussion's there and it's going to be there. Be a part of it and start being thoughtful about it. And do we absolutely need that? Are there other tools? Except again, worst case scenario, I always like that out, but we'll see what that holds. The National Police Misconduct Registry database, go ahead. I mean, we're supposed to be a transparent organization. I can tell you California has one of the most stringent laws related to personnel records, particularly internal affairs records. I see that being chipped away and that going away. Arizona next door, the state that I moved to and was a police chief in, I had to learn about that once that case is done, that's public record. And I think you'll see an erosion of that. And does it matter? Really, in the long term, my personal opinion, be the best you can be when things happen. Okay, whatever. what they're trying to get at is trying to get an even playing field, I should say, on the bad cops that we seem to hire, or people that go sideways on us that should not have the badge. We should know about those people. They should be decertified. They shouldn't be able to transfer to another organization. I'm okay with that. I'm raising the bar. It's a new world. Let's get on that bus. Interestingly, to note that the FBI has that national database, but 40% are participating. No bueno. Qualified immunity. Let me do one more. Qualified immunity. We almost lost that. Supreme Court just a couple of days ago decided not to hear that. If we lose that one, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to have police officers out there exposed to all that liability and death and destruction with no fallback, and they can go sue you and your family and everything else like that, even when you're doing it right and things go bad. Racial bias training, we're doing that now. Duty to intercede, most of us are doing that now. Civilian oversight, a lot of agencies have that. That's coming. Bias, most of us have that here in California, and that's going to take some money. So we're doing things well here. Doing things well in California. You ought to be very proud. We're not broken. We'll live. We'll get through this thing, but lead from the front. That's all I got there, Sean.
Thank you. If there's no final thoughts or questions, I realized a bit ago that I had the parameter on to not allow people to unmute themselves. So you should be able to do that now and answer any questions or ask any questions you have. But if not, I put Dave's email and his phone number that he mentioned at the beginning in the chat box, so you should have all that. But if there's no other final thoughts, we thank you, Dave, and thank everyone for logging in. And please bring some of these discussions back to your agency and refer to CPOA for the resources we can provide to help you through this time, and stay connected. And I hope everyone stays safe. Thanks all.